I believe the Lord gave me a word of encouragement for someone this morning, not just myself. This was a word for me, but I believe it's the Lord was putting it on my heart to release it to others as well. And also to encourage you and let you hear different ways that God can speak to you. As I was praying and worshiping God this morning and asking the Lord, my kids are at school one day a week. I homeschool the other time. And I was asking the Lord, okay, what do you want to do today? Do you want me to worship? Do you want me to study? Where do we start with? And so I do start with prayer and worship. But immediately the Lord impressed upon my heart to go find a book that I have. And as I'm going to look for this book, it took me a little bit to find it. But along the way, other books stood out. And each time a book stood out, I just grabbed it and stuck it in my hand. So I had 3 books at that point. And by the time I picked up that 3rd book, the Lord showed me a picture and I knew exactly where the other book was. So I went and grabbed it and I sat down in my Bible. And I just had this impression that the Lord was going to give me a snippet of a word or a nugget in each book. And it was going to be like puzzle pieces that you put together, kind of like a treasure hunt. And I was to find the puzzle pieces and then put the word together to get the message from the Lord that He wanted me to receive this morning. And so I asked the Lord, I said, okay, the first book I grabbed was The Deborahmental. This is by Christy Johnson, very powerful. I asked the Lord, what page do I turn to? And He said, turn to page 64. And so I turned to page 64. I began reading. Well, what stood out in that book was this phrase, it's time to step out of the cave. And I put that down because I knew I had received the nugget. I said, okay, God. The next book was The Art of Possibility by Rosamund Stone Zander and Benjamin Zander. I said, well, God, what page do I turn to on that one? And He said, page 114. And I began to read a few pages, and what stood out was on page 114. Notice where you are holding back and let go. The next book I had was The Wild Ones by Nate Johnson, the husband of Christy Johnson, who wrote The Deborahmental. Prophetic leaders and warriors. There are some people you need to study under them if you haven't heard from them, and listen to some of their messages that are straight from the Father's heart. But he told me to turn to page, I thought he said 222, and I was like, okay. So I went to 222. Nothing stood out, and I was like, all right. And then I said, well, maybe it's chapter 22. And so I went to chapter 22 and read, and then that stood out. So sometimes when you first think you hear and you go to investigate, you're like, it's not really resonating. But just keep pressing in and keep trying, per se. Like, just go where the Lord's leading. You can't mess up. And even if you do mess it up, God will work it out for your good anyways. And so I went to chapter 22, and that was where the message was. I read the whole chapter and got to the very end, and the word was, the waiting is over. Suddenly hope deferred will lift. Let it be your cry in this season that your waiting time is over. And it just got me excited because I'm like, okay, I can see the message building here, Lord. Well, the last book, the original book I was looking for, was Pain-Free Childbirth by Nisa Andrews. Every woman that is a mother or having in the stage of pregnancy and childbirth needs this book. It talks about just the blessing of what Jesus did, that pain in childbirth, that is under the curse. Jesus bore that. Anyway, so I got that book, and the Lord told me to turn to page 73. Well, when I turned to page 73, the page is about the blessing of the Lord. And the phrase that stood out was, it is finished. And I just began to weep because that is the very message that has been on my heart for the past few days. That phrase, it is finished. It is finished. It's been coming up nonstop. And so the total message for you today and for me was, it's time to step out of the cave. Notice where you are holding back and let go. The waiting is over. Suddenly hope deferred is going to lift. Let it be your cry in this season that your waiting time is over. It is finished. And because it ended with it is finished and the blessing of the Lord, I believe it's vital to meditate on the blessing of the Lord in this season and meditate on the promises of God. Read it over and over again. Just speak it. But I just want to encourage you, that's a way that God can speak. He speaks to me like that a lot because I love treasure hunts. I love searching things out. And so maybe that encourages you today to know it is finished. Whatever promise, whatever you've been under the warfare, have gone through to birth the promise God's giving you, God is saying it is finished. It is done. You can rest. Rest in Jesus' finished works, that He already paid the price for everything. He already paid the price for that promise. He already paid the price for the healing you're believing for. He already paid for it. It is finished. So rest in the finished works today. And I pray that you have a blessed day. And I pray this encouraged you as the Lord did me this morning. So blessings.